Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining the Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. This is Rick Chen from Blind. And with us, we have Shailesh Kumar, who's the Senior Vice President of Engineering and Head of Technology at ClickUp. Thanks for coming on the show, Shailesh.
Always great to be on the show.
And for those that don't know, ClickUp rather is the all-in-one productivity platform that flexes to the way people want to work. It actually replaces all the individual workplace productivity tools out there with a single unified platform. So everything from project management, document collaboration, whiteboards, spreadsheets, and goal tracking. The company was founded in 2017 and is based in San Diego and is on a mission to make the world more productive. Shailesh was previously the head of engineering or the vice president of engineering at MuleSoft and Salesforce after the acquisition, and the head of data platform and server teams at Tableau, also another Salesforce company.
Yep.
So Shailesh, you clearly have this big understanding of how enterprise tech works, how companies are thinking about technology. Can you give us kind of the more heads down view of how engineers and individual technologists should think about productivity and technology tools?
I think that the technology tools and productivity in general is very fragmented right now. There is a strong focus on productivity, especially post-COVID when all of us are working very remote. So there are two things that happened in the past decade or so. Okay, cloud applications, the advent of cloud applications, and the COVID environment where we all are working asynchronously. What that has resulted is that you have plethora of applications, a lot of different applications, which is doing specific things, and they're all claiming, or they all want you to be more productive. They want to give you functionality so that you can do your work better. What that results into is that any company that you go to, even a mid-size or large company, you have at least like 15 different tools and 20 different tools where you are doing different things. You're creating goals in somewhere else, you're creating your numbers in some spreadsheet, and then you're writing documents in some other place, and you have another system for your task management, and none of them talk to each other. So when you want to update something, you have to update in different places, and it's very difficult to get a 360 view of your organization or how the work is getting done. And that eventually results into loss of productivity. And that's where ClickUp comes in. We've done a great job of bringing all of them together and building a single platform so that you have a single view of from a productivity perspective. And that's our belief. I think that's how everyone should look at it. Having an integrated platform is way more compelling. It is very important to have an integrated platform to be more productive. Otherwise, you will spend a lot of time just navigating between different systems and lose a lot of time.
You know, it's so interesting because it seems that during the pandemic, now it may have, ClickUp and others may have been around, but am I wrong in saying that the pandemic really hastened this? Where, as you pointed out, when people working remote, they realize, oh my gosh, where is this thing? You're not in the office together. You don't have your colleagues to turn over to and say, hey, Rick, how can I get this material? How can I get this document? So is that really what happened? That all of a sudden it just caught fire?
It did. I would say asynchronous work really accelerated in post-COVID, because earlier you had different offices. Right? You're like, every company had 2 or 3 offices. People were sitting next to each other. You could turn around and ask questions. Now in an async environment, there's a lot more global workforce. It means that there are not 2, 3 offices. Now there are 200 or 300 offices, which each of our home or each of our office rooms inside our homes becoming an office by itself. So it's very difficult to work in an async environment where you also have different time zones. So you're asking questions and maybe you're not getting a response right away because someone is in EMEA, someone is in APAC. That has accelerated the need of something like ClickUp, where you have to figure out how do you work with each other more in a more productive way. So definitely the need has accelerated by post-COVID.
How is it different? Because I believe there's a number of other entities that do similar things, right? Like Notion and other. How is each one very different, or they try to be more unique, or kind of focus on one niche, or it's just it's just a hot, a big area and a growth area, and there's a need for different platforms?
I think it's a big area right now, and as many of these platforms mature, time will tell how things progress. We all have different take on it. Notion has a different take on it. Airtable and Smartsheet, everyone has a different take on it. But I think everyone recognizes in this industry that integration is going to be the key, and having an integrated platform so that you can bring all of them together is going to be the key. The question will become who understands the customers better. Do we understand the problems and have a hypothesis on how we want to be customized in order you work? So think about how you think about a Blind, or think about there are other companies out there, small and big. Everyone has different ways of working. No two companies work similarly. There are very different ways of working. And that's where from a productivity platform, you want it to be integrated. And you also want it to be customizable. And that's the two axes that we look at. At this point, ClickUp is the only platform which is highly customizable and integrated, which is where we do very, very well. Because when we go and pitch to different companies, they want to customize ClickUp and how they work. Some companies are top down. They have mandates that get driven. Some companies are a lot more viral in terms of how they work. Some are more hierarchical, some are more flat. Everyone works very differently. So if you have a very opinionated, integrated productivity platform, it makes it very hard, because then the software is imposing how you should work, versus it should be the other way around. I know how I work. I want the software to flex to how I work.
Hey, Rick, I'm just curious, do you use a productivity software at Blind?
We do. So a lot of our engineering, product, and design team uses Notion. And then a lot of our business teams, they use like more task management focused tools. So like a Jira, Confluence, or a Asana. So again, to Shailesh's point and ClickUp's point, very fragmented, even within a company's different organizations, right? Different teams.
Yep.
They're not collaborating with one another. They're just collaborating within the team or within their kind of select partners, which is quite an interesting feat.
And I think as this industry matures, we will see more consolidation.
Right.
That makes sense, because I see that a lot. I wonder, I'm glad you brought that up, because with the bigger picture, I wonder how this is going to play out. Venture capital funding was just through the roof. Money was thrown at everything. You had, you turn around, there's another unicorn startup somewhere. And now it seems like, the funding is drying up. There's downsizing, hiring freezes, jobs being rescinded. Do you think whether in your space, the productivity space, or just generally in the tech space, you're going to start seeing a lot of consolidation, mergers, acquisitions, and then maybe some companies just not making it because they can't, they don't have, the funding is going to get dried up. Do you see that on the horizon?
I think the productivity space is still very strong.
Mm-hmm.
However, the one thing that has happened probably made it a little more difficult for seed startups, I would say, is to find the seed money. So it's difficult to start a company right now, I would say, and in productivity space. So last year we would see, a new company coming up every week in the productivity space. I don't think we are seeing that anymore, because it's just harder to find, capital at a very seed stage. However, anyone who is at mid stage and beyond, they will continue to do very well. They are continuing to do very well. And of course, for a lot of very, very early stage companies, it is, profitability and efficiency is very key right now, and they're having a hard time. So I see a lot of consolidation at that stage, where a lot of small companies will get acquired by mid-sized or large companies. But I don't see any I don't expect any mid-sized large companies to struggle in the productivity space. The productivity space is going very strong right now.
Right. So is that a good sign for a technologist? Folks on Blind, they join Blind, they're active on Blind because they want to advance their careers. And lately, in the last 2 years with COVID, everyone working asynchronously, all of these collaboration apps have really blown up in terms of their hiring, in terms of their growth, in terms of even the product launches. The velocity has been so incredible. What is your take on whether that kind of hiring growth if that's a good opportunity for technologists?
I think it is a good opportunity. The good part will be that at this phase, when the money dries up, the good ones shine. I
Right.
think right now, a lot of companies they were, going in like me too, as in, okay, I got something too, and that
Okay.
that will dry down. I think the true innovation will come out now, and people will focus on true innovation, things that really differentiate and solve the user's problem, versus just taking the capital and trying to build something and trying to attract the users. That's where, so I actually like this. I like the current situation better because this is I mean, technologies, we need to do the hard work. It became too easy to innovate. I think it's true innovation will stand out now, and I
Wait,
like that part.
wait, what do you mean it's too easy? Because this, for a non-techie, it sounds very complicated. So how, when you
Too
say
easy
like
as in,
easy, and now
and
it's like, what do you, what are the cool
so
things you're
when
going to work on that is like intellectually challenging?
so from a technology perspective, if
Yeah.
you think about the problem that the user is having in terms of building an integrated platform, how do you scale it to millions and millions of users? And that's a hard problem, and uh, and now we have to think about how to truly innovate and solve people problem in a way where it makes exponential difference, not incremental difference, not slightly difference that, okay, you got, your productivity got better by like 5% year over year. It got to be like 5x, 50x, and 100x. So that's the true innovation. Like, think of things that are truly innovative, like iPhone or Google or Maps, or they truly transformed how the entire industry was. It was not a 10x or a 10% or 20% increase. It just shifted your the complete model. I think true innovation is where you significantly make a lot of difference, and technology is supposed to enable that. In technology, it's all about scale. Look at any of the companies. How do you scale? How do you take a concept which significantly improves your productivity and scale it out to millions of users? That's the hard part, and that's what ClickUp is working on right now. And I think that's where companies will differentiate themselves, and the ones that are able to do that will be very successful.
Is it though two paths though? Is it one, scalability to have millions of users, millions of companies using your software? And or is it to add other features on top of it? Are those two separate, or the two are combined? Like, hey, I want to grow, we want to have, a million, corporate clients, but then we're also going to offer, and then you have kind of a laundry list of interesting features on there as well.
You have to do both.
Both.
I don't think there's an answer to one or the other. The scale has to happen along with innovation.
And you don't have to
There's
give any secrets, but what would be some of the cool features that you would add on to it?
So we have talked about ClickUp 3.0 that is coming up later in the year, and I think this is where Corey will stop me. This is coming up later in the year, and we have a lot of cool initiatives and cool features that are coming out about ClickUp 3.0.
I'm kind of curious, as an engineer or a technologist, when you hear about these companies and you're applying, is there a way to figure out what is hype and what's actually destined for pure scale? Right? It's so easy for a software as a service and productivity app to say, well, our target market is anyone that uses a computer or anyone that works, right? Like, how do you figure out like fact versus fiction there?
So it depends. So there are two aspects to that answer, right? One aspect is, does that product actually scale or not? And second one is, I go back to my integrated platform that I would discourage people from using a lot of fragmented solution, because every day there's a new some ad that comes up. If you want to do time tracking better, use this tool. And if I start using many of those, I can tell you, like, my desktop or my application will be full of 100 applications which are doing specific things, and I wouldn't even
Okay.
remember which one to, like, what time tracking. I'll have to keep a list of things that, okay, for X I need to do Y software. That's very difficult. So that's where I think right now I highly encourage everyone to use an integrated platform, because it makes it very easy for us to be more productive and more and be able to use it better. In terms of scale, I think it all comes down to their architecture. How is their architecture in terms of scaling, and how have they been able to scale in the past? Scaling is a hard problem. It is something, it boils down to architecture in terms of horizontal scaling and how are you scaling. Most of the companies are in the cloud environment, right? So in the cloud environment, how do you scale boils down to how are you using the architecture? How are you using the infrastructure well with your architecture? It's hard to see from outside because you wouldn't know Notion's architecture, our architecture. So it's a little bit hard. You have to figure out, you have to look at their current usage. How many users are there? How are they using it? To get a sense of, are they able to scale or not?
And so, like, as someone that is looking for a job, are these questions that they should be asking during the interview process, to kind of figure out the vitality or like the scale potential of a company?
I think so. I look at that one slightly differently. So as a user, as a customer, and as a candidate, as an interviewer, as someone who wants to join that company, as a customer, you want to see that it has a good architecture. However, as someone who wants to join a company, you want to make sure that the business is very sound. You believe in the business and you believe in the virality of the product. And if it has scale challenges, that's a good opportunity for someone to join and solve the scale challenges. So that's how I look at it. As long as they have a good virality from a product and a good business model, I think it's a great place to join. And even if they have scale challenges, go and solve those scale challenges, because that's where you will get a lot of gratification.
I mean, how do you tell the difference during the interview process between, something that is kind of like a worthy challenge versus something that has like no heckin' way of scaling, right? No matter how much time you spend into it, it's not going anywhere.
So I think most of us, when we interview people, we are very direct and open about the current state of our architecture or our infrastructure. And so I would say ask questions, ask a lot of questions. Most of the times we don't want people to be surprised when they come in. So we are very, very, very honest about the state of the architecture infrastructure and talk about it in a lot more details, because we want the candidates to make a very informed decision. So ask questions. Ask as many questions as you can about the infrastructure, the architecture, current scale challenges that they're seeing. What's the biggest problem they've faced in the last 1 month, 1 week? What was the last, let's say, outage or challenge, and how did they solve it? What's the company's priority? Ask those questions. That gives a very good insights into the company's focus.
I guess you want people to ask those questions because that shows they're interested.
Yes.
They're intellectually curious. They want to find out how it's going to play out. And I imagine that it's almost like Jenga or building a house of cards, that to make it grow higher and taller, you really need that strong foundation. Otherwise, it's not going to work. I imagine that's how it is, just from a layman's perspective.
That is indeed correct. Indeed correct. So you have to lay down a good foundation, and laying down think of building a house.
Mm-hmm.
Laying down the foundation takes a lot of time. But if once you have a good foundation, you can build a lot on top of it. That is exactly how product architecture works. However, there are many times we hire people to lay down those foundations. So I don't think any answer is wrong. It depends on what the person is joining for what stage. So there are people who love building the foundation. There are people who want to build features on top of a good foundation. It all depends on what you're looking for. But it all starts with asking a lot of questions. Ask a questions, understand the state of the company, where it is in their scaling phase. Like I joined Tableau when we were very early, and we scaled it, build the enterprise product, build the data platform, the data management suite of products. When I joined MuleSoft, the platform was having a lot of issues, and we scaled the platform. I personally, when I would want to join a company to build the foundation, but that's where everyone has their own interests, and it all starts with asking a lot of questions.
I mean, you've been in engineering leadership for many years now. Is it a common trait or a common desire of wanting to build that foundation? Is that kind of like a necessary prerequisite to becoming a head of engineering or a senior VP or even a CTO?
At some level, yes. So if you want
Uh-huh.
to be in a senior leadership role, you need to have a lot of experience, breadth of experience, and having done and seen different things. So if someone has never built a foundation before, it will put them at a slightly disadvantage, because you have to have the experience of building a foundation, also experience of building a lot of features on top of a foundation, so that you can go on that journey. I mean, as we interview senior leaders, the biggest thing we look for is, outside of intellect and EQ, do you have the experiences, the breadth of experiences, not the number of years of experience, but the breadth of experience. And that's where I advise people that collect experiences, don't collect years.
Okay.
Years will come by automatically. You can't stop time, but collect as many experiences in as little time. That's the goal of, if you want to grow quickly in your career, collect as many experiences in as little time.
Is that why you see in Silicon Valley different than, let's say, even Wall Street, where people work for a year, leave, go somewhere else, maybe work a year and a half, go somewhere else, and keep going because they're learning as much as they can, getting, connections, networking, learning, moving, and keep going? Is that, as opposed to staying there and just plodding along? Is that why you have that?
That is indeed one of the reasons, and that's why many of the large companies and many of the companies do try to give the same experience, different experiences to a candidate in the same company. And that's like but if someone is not able to find different experiences, yes, candidate, like many people, go and seek those different experiences elsewhere because they want to experience different things.
And to build upon what Rick was asking about people who are interviewing for jobs, if you're not a technologist, because in your organization, you have marketing people, salespeople, accountants, attorneys, the whole gamut. So how can you go? Let's say you're an attorney, let's say you're an accountant, a marketing person, a social media person. How do you tell? Because you can't open up the hood and look at the architecture and say, oh, yes, they're great. How do you know if you're going to a company that is the real deal and has the technology to scale and grow 10x, 50x, or it's kind of more hype? Is there any metrics people could use who are non-techies who could come in and just get a better understanding? Am I going into a good situation or am I not?
I think from a business perspective, you should look at the real numbers, the growth numbers in terms of new users that are signing up. Are you seeing a lot of churn? As in, are you able to? So, are you getting new users? Are the users sticking with you? And are the users expanding? And they both, you can look at the NDR and there are other terms for it, but at the bottom line, that's what you want to look for, because that will give you a real sense of the architecture, if it is scaling or not. If it is scaling, it means that they'll continue to have new users. They will be able to retain those users. They won't churn, and they will expand. It means that they're happy with the product and they want to do more. If you have that in a consistent way, I think you can be fairly certain that the architecture behind that product is sound. Might have issues here and there, but it would be sound. If you're seeing a very high degree of churn, that people are signing up, but then they're tricked out, like they're not sticking with the platform, then that is an indication that there's something off.
How do they find that? Do they Google it, or how?
Many of the companies do publish it, but again, I'll go back to, in the interview, you should ask those questions. And many companies during the interview, because these are not technology based numbers, and many of the companies are very open with it, even publicly. And if not publicly, at least in the interviews, they're very open with what's their churn rate, what's the NDR, and how are people expanding.
Yeah, the churn rate must be one of the best metrics, because if I use the service, but then I say, I'm going to cancel my subscription and multiply that by others, that shows we're not loving it. We're not really getting value from it. And maybe you have a good sales team that could just get more people to buy it, but then you keep losing folks. So it says, there's something wrong. Something's not clicking here.
Correct. But again, you also want to see the churn rate of people who've used it for some time and then stopped using it. Not the trial ones, because there are many people who want to try out things and they move off. That is, you want to see that, okay, were they genuinely interested? because you want to, the true test of the product is for someone who's genuinely interested in your product and they don't like it. That's what you're looking for. So someone who tried to use the software and then churned, that's the one you want to figure out. And that's the one internally even we look at, because we are very concerned if we see that someone is genuinely trying to use our product and then churn. That's the measure we look at internally, that what happened there.
Are there any other like savvy or like questions that impress you that we should be asking in interviews?
Are you talking about candidates should be asking, or this one?
Yes. Job
Sorry.
candidates.
Job candidate. I think the good part about, I get impressed when people have done their homework in terms of the market, why they're joining this company, and have done some analysis and asking some of the hard questions. Hey, what are the issues that you're seeing? Really understand at a deeper level what they're coming in for. Understand the state of the company, understand what they're bringing into the table. So if they ask those questions, I get very impressed that they've done their homework, they're genuinely interested in the company, and they want to understand more to make a better decision. So I like when people ask me hard questions during the interview. What are the architectural challenge, infrastructure challenge, or why are customers churning? Why are they not sticking with the product, or which type of customers are sticking with the product? Where are you seeing your biggest challenge in the next 2 to 3 years? Someone starts asking very deep questions, that really impresses me, that okay, they're doing their homework, not just for the company, but for their own career. They want to make sure that they are making a good choice.
I mean, we've heard from a lot of heads of engineering, these vice presidents of engineering, these CTOs, that they're spending a lot of time on recruiting.
Yes.
Could you walk us through the challenges of recruiting in this environment? Like how, we always hear these stories about how hard it is to land a technologist or an engineer at your team. How are you taking your approach to recruiting?
So we have some creative ways. Of course, sourcing. There are many creative ways of sourcing that we have tried. We do not only look inside the US, but in other places in the world too. The focus is to find the best talent wherever they are. We also look at other creative ways, like there are many libraries that use open source libraries. We look at their top committers, try to figure out from there as to people who might be interested, who might not be looking out for a job, but just they're very interested in this. There are blog posts. So there are other places we go to find the right candidates. The main thing we index on is that, yes, they should have a technical aptitude, but they should also have an attitude, the go-getter attitude for this phase of the company. And that there's just some signals that we look for in their career, in where they're engaged, how engaged they are, to get those people. And that's where we start sourcing them. And then during the interview process, you're right that it's very hard to land. So you got to sell the company from your first interview. You cannot sell the interview once you have determined that the person is good, because by that time the person has already made up his opinion of how the company is. So you start selling from interview one. Everyone sells, and then you try to close them there. It's a hard time to hire. Yes, for sure. But if you have a sound product, if you're able to tell the story, and then help and understand from candidate what are they looking for. Many times I've told candidates that, this might not be the best place for you, even if you're the great candidate, because you're looking for something very different and you will not be able to provide that. So I am very, very honest in that, because I want anyone who joins ClickUp, I want them to be successful. As much as they want to be successful at ClickUp, I want them to be successful at ClickUp. So I want to make sure that someone is has the right attitude, wants to join something at this stage of the company. Other companies are in many different stages, like all the way from Microsoft and Salesforce to our stages, and everyone looks for different things for their careers.
Now, this might sound a little cold, but given that we're seeing more downsizings, do you think in a way for a company like yours, that could be a good opportunity to get top talent who unfortunately are in between roles? Does that help out by freeing up this talent?
So freeing up the existing talent?
Yeah, because if you have some of these companies, here, whether the cryptocurrency exchanges is what, 17,000 plus, people within the tech sector, startup sector have been downsized. So that's a lot of people looking for work.
It does sound cold, but yes, that does help. We are definitely doing that.
And I'm using it, not you, but like I'm saying it from my perspective, just cold in the sense that you don't want to feel like you're benefiting for somebody well, but you help them getting a job. You know what I mean? So they're free, and hopefully if they don't have a job, that's not good, but if they get a job, that's good. So that's cool.
Yes, that's how, so we are actively hiring right now. We are looking to hire 200 more engineers by end of next year. So we are looking at
200.
Yes,
that's it. I don't know, Rick, that sounds a lot, right? Or is it or not? Is that, I don't know how to compare it.
Right now, it's a great number.
The current market is definitely helping us land some of the top talent because we are aggressively hiring, whereas there are many companies who are downsizing their tech talent. So it definitely helps. We've been very active in that. And it helps the people also, right? It helps the candidates go from a place of uncertainty where they're laid off to a place like ClickUp, which is growing very fast.
So 200, how many? So what, you have 800? How many people do you have at ClickUp?
We have approximately 800 people across the board and around 140 engineers.
And then in 140, but you're looking for another 200.
Correct.
I have to ask, what is it like recruiting a global team of engineers? Is the process different outside of the US?
It is slightly different because you have to think about, this is an overused word, but recruiting or hiring is like marriage. So you need to understand the other person as well as they understand your company. So in many different cultures and many different places, the people are looking for different things. So you have to understand the cultural differences of many places as you hire globally. That becomes very important, and that's why a lot of companies do restrict the number of countries they go to, because it is an operational overhead in terms of understanding the environment, the culture, the labor laws of that country. So it is operational. There's a significant operational overhead in going truly global. Not so. There are many aspects of going global, right? You can go from 1 country to 5 countries to 10 countries, versus like, hey, truly global. We don't care where you are.
Right.
It is an operational overhead, so you need to understand the culture, what motivates them, what do they value, and go from there and speak that language. So as we go global, many times we understand what they're looking for. We help them understand what ClickUp is, because ClickUp might be very popular in specific countries, might not be very well known in specific countries. They might not be aware of the productivity space. So we do have to do a little bit of education when we go to different places. But that's how we're able to hire a lot of global talent.
Got it. So if I'm abroad, I'm outside of the US and I want to interview at ClickUp, what should I know? What are like kind of the insider tips of how I could demonstrate my cultural awareness of the company's norms? I mean, besides the research into what we just mentioned in terms of like the company, the history, the churn, the metrics, the product.
I don't think anything from a candidate perspective. It's mostly more from ClickUp that we want to understand what the candidate is looking for. But I think it comes down to the same questions. If irrespective of where you are, we want you to understand where ClickUp is. Do a little bit of homework in terms of, is ClickUp the place you want to join? What do you want to do? What experience are you looking for your next career move? Is ClickUp going to provide you that experience? And so doing that research and then applying, showing your desire and the go-getter attitude is the one we index on.
Got it. I mean, beyond this recruiting, which I'm sure is time intensive and quite challenging, how else do you spend your day as a senior vice president of engineering?
So my week or my week or so day is hard because there are different days I focus on different things, but overall
Okay.
my week is definitely structured differently. For example, there are few strategic things outside of hiring. Hiring takes a majority, as a good portion of my time, all the way from sourcing, interviewing to closing, to selling. So different all the motions, and sometimes keeping in touch with people who rejected. Okay, because keeping those connections live do help you, because people change their mind all the time. They do come back. So just keeping those, that takes a good portion of my time. And then a lot of focus is on strategic initiatives in terms of all the way from product planning to the operational cadence, in terms of the engineering processes that we need to set in terms of for scaling the company, organization health, setting up some of the people process, in terms of career conversations, so setting up those processes. And that's where right now we are building a lot of foundation at ClickUp in terms of organization health and engineering process. So a good part of goes into strategic planning about how do we scale. And then I also do a lot of operational reviews in terms of execution. How is the team doing? What are the different top initiatives that we are working on? We are big on priorities, so we set our priorities and we want to make sure that the top priorities always get done. So I have a lot of operational reviews of the top priorities across the engineering organization, and understand where people are getting blocked, what's the progress, how we're trending, and understand those things. And then a lot of time in escalations, all the way from customer escalations to people escalations. That's how typically the week goes. Part of it is interrupt driven, like escalations, and then a lot of strategic and operational reviews.
So like, let's say I'm an engineer and I'm at the midpoint of my career, and I want to like advance, right? And I'm looking towards what you're doing. How do I get that operational experience? How do I get that hands-on experience, like escalation, like harder and harder tasks or challenges?
I think it comes down to the team that you. So if you anyone who shows ownership is always given more and more to do. Okay, that's
Okay.
standard for every company. Okay,
Right.
uh, I think just showing ownership, you will do more, and by doing more, you will get more experiences, and you will get into harder problems, and you will get into escalations, and just raising your hand, saying that what, I got it. And actually, when you raise your hand that I got this, and following through all the way to the end, not only gives you the experience but also gives you the credibility to get the next one. And every company right now is stretched for resources, and that's why we are hiring, right? So it means that every company has more to do than the people there. So it is a great time and it's always good for someone who is there inside the company to show that initiative, show that ownership attitude, and take an initiative and follow that through to get it done. That's the only way to go about it. And once you do that a couple of times, you build ownership, you build that attitude, you build your credibility, and you continue to rise. And then you go build more experiences. You have to be very methodical about the experiences you're trying to build. Either you want to go on a management track or an IC track, or you want to focus on infrastructure, and you try to build experiences related to those, so that you are you have to build the relevant experiences depending on what you're looking for in your career.
Would you say those experiences are more like readily available at a smaller company or at a startup, or the opposite, where you're at a huge company like a Meta, Apple, Google, where you have that built-in scale and maybe you can rack up these experiences much more quickly?
I think they're available in both places. I've worked in both types of companies, large and small. I think they are readily available in both. It's just the type of experiences are differently readily available. So, for example, in a startup, you will have limited number of experiences, because in a startup we don't have multiple businesses and we don't have multiple business units. So in a startup, it's a smaller environment, but the problem statements or the problems are different types. So scale will be a problem there. For most of the startup, scale will be a significant problem. So if you want to gain experiences around scale, should join a startup or a mid-sized company. That's where you will get the most experience. if you're going to go and join Meta right now, you're not going to get a scale experience because they've already scaled. They've already solved that problem. So different companies have different problems readily available to them, and you will get those experiences. It just Meta will have different experiences, right? Different problems readily available for you to experience, and a startup will have different. Startups will have mostly a lot of scale problems, various types of scale problems, right? Organizational scale, scaling from an engineering process perspective, scaling from an architecture and infrastructure perspective. Whereas a company like Facebook or a company like Meta will have problems around, building a lot of new features. Privacy is a big one for them. Understanding a lot of maybe different, I would say, data jurisdiction constraints. You will get to experience them in places like Meta or Salesforce or other places. So different types of problem. And that's where probably I'll come back to what Jack was talking about, is people change companies because they want to get those different experiences, different places, and gather them.
It makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, if I recall, you guys are based in San Diego, right?
Yes.
So do you feel removed from Silicon Valley and San Fran? And how do you see the landscape over the next 3, 6, 9 months? Do you think it's going to be kind of rocky for the whole tech sector and the startup sector and the cryptocurrency exchanges? Any sense? Do you have a pulse of what may happen?
So I am based in San Francisco.
Okay.
The company headquarters is in San Diego, but we are truly a global company. It means that we have executives, leadership, and engineers, and everyone based across the globe. We have offices in London, we have offices in Dublin, we have offices in Sydney and other places. So we have various offices and people, and many people even in places where we don't have offices. So truly global company. San Diego is the headquarters. From a technology sector perspective, I think it will be rocky. It will continue to be rocky for next 6 to 9 months until probably we get a little more stability. And the focus is on, I'll go back to the best companies will shine right now, and a lot of noise will fade out. Once that noise fades out, that's where we'll start to come out of, outside of the global conditions about Ukraine and on inflation. Outside of those things, I think in the tech sector, there will be some not only consolidation, but companies have to truly focus on efficiency, growth, doing true innovation. But it'll be this way for probably 6 to 12 months. I won't even say 6 to 9, but probably for 6 to 12 months, it will continue to be rocky.
Long term, isn't that a good thing though?
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like, Greg, doesn't it sound like from an outside perspective, and not in that ecosystem, it feels like just a fortune was being put, it was free money basically. Interest rates were like zero. So, the venture capitalists had tons of money to just throw at all these companies. And when that happens, you can have some great companies and some mediocre and some not so good. And I guess what happens when you have high inflation and maybe a recession, the good ones will stand the test of times. The other ones, maybe not so much. I think that's how capitalism works, right? Where it kind of cleans the brush, if you will. And then the good ones will get even better. And the ones that really didn't have a business model, probably maybe they won't make it, or maybe they have some some technology that someone will buy out. Is that you think kind of what you may see happening?
So that it is a good thing, and I think that is what will happen. However, keep in mind that there is a lot of innovation that happened when the money was freely available, because people were very free to innovate. There was less risk. So there was a lot more innovation. The pace of innovation definitely accelerated. Now, of course, the pace of innovation comes with a lot of noise that happens because the money is also freely available. So it'll get squeezed. I think that the good companies will shine. But I think it was a good thing that the money flew into the market, because it accelerated the pace of innovation in many different sectors on the technology side. So I think that was still a good thing. It's time for a little bit of cleanup now.
So in a way, this is good. So it's not like, a financial crisis or something, or the .com implosion, but it sounds like, hey, all right, maybe we were ahead, we were over our skis for a while, and now we're just coming back to some sort of normalcy, reining in and regrouping, and then kind of have that next wave, maybe 6-9 months, a year later.
It looks like that way.
Yeah.
Again, hard to say from a, not a financial expert in this
Yeah.
one, but looks like.
Gosh, it's really interesting to kind of see it all unfold, right? Because folks often on blind that they're worried about a recession, they're worried about getting laid off, they're concerned that some of these large companies are freezing or pausing hiring, whatever word that they want to use. um and it's really interesting to kind of see, you know, last year we had the great resignation. It was almost at its peak, everyone was kind of moving around, and how quickly things
Right.
changed. It almost seemed overnight. um but I imagine like there were signs, right? We probably could have seen some of this going on where it's like, oh, is it really make sense for an engineer right out of college to just land a job so quickly and like with all these like fabulous benefits and perks? It's almost like this reckoning was a little like we should have seen the signs, like opened our eyes, right?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think most of us knew it. We were just waiting. Okay, when will it happen? It was more about when versus if. And you know, I would say that many of us got very surprised that it happened so quickly.
Right.
It's interesting. So much in Wall Street during the financial crisis, you know, people gave this analogy. It was like money was flowing. So it's like you're picking up dollar bills in front of a steamroller, and you keep knowing eventually the steamroller is going to roll you over. But as you keep picking up, you're going to say, all right, things are great. And then all it takes is that one day, like you're saying, Rick, it turns around and you're squished. And that's
Right.
kind of, I think, what kind of happens is that you kind of know what's going to, you know, I'll give you another really intelligent analogy. It's like if you ever watch Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, and Wile E. Coyote is running after the Roadrunner, and Wile E. Coyote runs right off the cliff, and he's still running. But the moment he looks down, that's when he falls. So it's almost like that's what happened, right? Like, you know, running, everything great. And then collectively, I think we all look down and go, oh no, and then go plummeting down the cliff. It's and it happens all the time. You see, it's like it constantly boom and bust, not just tech, but, you know, in a lot of sectors.
But I would still say the technology sector is still probably a very, very strong sector right now. I think it will continue to be. It's a temporary phase that'll pass, and companies will get back to hiring. This is still the best sector right now from a growth perspective, and for candidates to come and look at companies. Yes, there might be this temporary pause across the companies for hiring, but I don't think this will last very long. The technology sector, there's a lot more innovation. Companies still need to innovate. They still need engineers to build those things that is needed for innovation. I think it is a temporary phase. It will come back. Probably not at the same levels, but it will come back very soon.
When you say innovation, any whether with your organization or elsewhere, any really cool innovations, technologies that you see on the horizon that are game changers?
I think productivity will continue to be game changer in different forms and shapes. I don't think the productivity story has completely played out. People post-COVID, you know, for example, post-COVID, there was a lot of assumption that people will go back to offices. Now, I think we all are realizing that that's never happening. You know, we've truly gone global. Okay, so the fabric of productivity, the fabric of how people work has changed in just last 2 years. So that will have downstream consequences on how people work and how productivity from various different angles. I think that is still poised for a lot of innovation, and we've only seen probably the first 5-10% of it. I think that will continue to be the biggest area of innovation for the next 5 years.
Well, I think that makes sense. I mean, Jack and I were taking a crack at tech and how all of a sudden it was, but I think you're exactly right, Shailesh, right? Like every company is now a tech company, right? You're seeing
Yeah.
every company use a lot more data. Everyone's turning to the cloud. Everyone's turning online. There truly is no escaping it, right? It's truly seemingly the future.
True. And I think I would equate this to similarly how cloud started. This feels very similar to the start of the cloud journey, where there were naysayers like, all right, is cloud here to stay? There's still a lot of on-prem software. And
Right.
now it's the cloud has become just normal. I think productivity is probably going through a similar phase of journey and still early.
Got it. And so you're hiring 200 engineers. You're
Yes.
still early in your career, in your journey at ClickUp. Obviously, still growing and scaling incredibly. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Shailesh.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great questions. Really enjoyed my conversation.
It was great. Thank you so much.